Hi, everyone, and welcome to Wholesale Change. It's the webcast and podcast from Distribution Strategy Group, where we offer thought leadership for wholesale change agents like you. My name's Ian Heller. I'll be your co-host today, along with my brilliant business partner and all-around good guy, Jonathan Bine, PhD. Jonathan, how are you today, my friend?
I'm great because I'm working with you, and it
Woo!
is a joyous day when we have Wes Smith on our show. Very
I
excited.
know. We're so lucky to have Wes here. I'm so excited to talk to him.
So what's the capital of Alabama?
Isn't it Birmingham? Birmingham?
No,
What is the capital? I don't remember. What is it?
Montgomery.
Montgomery. Montgomery.
Yeah,
I don't do a very good accent. I can't even do a British accent in my mom's English.
there you go.
So anyway, good. Well, hey, we're going to have a great show here today. But before we get started, let's do a little business to pay the bills, starting with ECI Evolution X. Today's episode of Wholesale Change is brought to you by ECI Evolution X, a B2B commerce platform built for electrical distributors. Before Wes shares some of the challenges and key issues facing the industry, we'll share a secret with you. There's a tool that the best electrical distributors are using to tackle these problems. Imagine removing the pain of supply chain disruptions, rising costs, and inflation. Now, picture the ability to help your customers mitigate labor shortages and win more bids. It's not a far-off dream. In fact, you can have it ready for your business sooner than you think. To discover more about this mysterious tool, go to ECISolutions.com/wholesale change and download your free infographic. That's ECISolutions.com/wholesale change. And download your free infographic, ECI Evolution X, B2B e-commerce built for electrical distributors, which is a lot of what we're talking about today. Okay. Were you going to say something, Jonathan?
I said, indeed, we are.
Indeed, we are. Today's podcast is also sponsored by our friends at Epicor, a software company that has helped thousands of wholesale distributors for more than 50 years to integrate their business functions into one ERP system. Because of their deep experience in distribution, they understand your world and your unique challenges. Epicor ERPs are designed to help you operate more efficiently today while preparing you for whatever comes next. They will transform your ERP from a system of record to a system of insights and action with easy to use, practical, outcome-focused, and responsible AI. Epicor Solutions provide distributors like you with a consolidated ERP that is ready to use out of the box and allows for long-term growth. If you're interested in new technology, they'd love to chat with you to understand what you're looking for. You can reach out to them at epicor.com/distribution. That's epicor.com/distribution. Next up is ORS. Distributors are constantly challenged with having the right inventory in the right place at the right time without stocking everything everywhere and having expensive excess inventory. How do you reduce your working capital needs while having enough inventory at each location to meet customer demand? With over 20 years of proven results in the industrial, MRO, retail, and manufacturing industries, the ORS Group's AI and machine learning powered tools generate accurate demand forecasts. This allows distributors to anticipate demand before it occurs using inventory optimization tools and digital twin simulations. We all know that AI is going to be a part of every conversation in every industry and will continue to grow exponentially. The market and the need for AI solutions are moving quicker than ever before. The solutions the ORS Group offers can be leveraged by anyone in the supply chain. Their customers have seen reduction in overall inventory by 50%, reduction in lost sales by 87%, increase in revenues of 15%, reduction in working capital by 20%. To start a conversation with ORS Group, contact them at www.ors-group.ai. That's www.ors-group.ai, or reach out through LinkedIn. And our last sponsor of the day, before we get to Wes, is our good friends at Whitecup. Are you spending hours compiling sales reports only to find the information is outdated by the time you're done? Whitecup BI transforms raw data from your ERP into actionable insights so you can see how each ship-to location is performing, spot sales trends faster, and recommend the right products at the right time. With hundreds of pre-built reports and dashboards designed for distributors, it's easy for your entire team to use. Turn your data into dollars with Whitecup BI. Learn how by visiting whitecupsolutions.com. That's whitecupsolutions.com. Thank you to all our sponsors who make this content possible. Now let's get on with the show and bring in our honored guest, the current president and CEO of NAED, Mr. Wes Smith. Wes, welcome to Wholesale Change.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's certainly an honor to be invited by you guys to participate in this. Y'all are doing some great work, and I appreciate being invited.
Thank you, sir, but it is our honor. As I said earlier, we're so happy to have you here. Hey, Wes, I've got your background up, but oh, sorry, Jonathan, you were going to say something.
And to our audience, there's a Q&A button at the bottom.
Oh, yeah.
And definitely feel free to ask questions when we want to make this interactive as possible. We might decide to defer questions to later, but definitely we'll try to get to all of them.
But no more state capitals questions.
Okay. Better come prepared.
You asked one. You asked one. I don't want to answer anymore. I normally get those, so that was kind of surprising. So Wes, look, I've got a bunch of your career accomplishments on the screen here, but let's start with what you did before this. You were in the Air Force, right?
I was. That's been a minute. You know, if I would have went to college out of high school, I would have finished college around 1983 or 1984. I went down. So when folks ask me, where did I grow up? There's a long version and a short version. I lived in 5 countries by the time I was 15. I was a military brat. My formative years were in rural Alabama, and I went down to Auburn out of high school. And after 1 year, I didn't get invited back. Showing up in discipline, I didn't have discipline, and I really didn't show up because I didn't have a lot of discipline. So I joined the Air Force, probably the best decision I ever made in my life. I went through electronics school in the Air Force. My career field was secure communications. So I was in datacom before datacom became a thing. Probably went through the best electronics school the world had to offer. I learned all about AND gates, OR gates, and NOR gates and how electronics work. And it was the communication transformation from analog to digital as far as secure comm, and it was from analog to digital to software based. So I was there at the right time, which really formed my love for technology and software and analytics. But when I got out of the school part of it, I was put into an installation group. So we did installs of communication equipment, which included everything from the power pole to the back of a piece of communications equipment. So I was doing electrical installation work. And that's really how I got in this industry. And when I got out of the Air Force, I went back to school. School was pretty easy. Showing up and discipline was 95% of the battle. It wasn't an issue of intellect. It was an issue of showing up. And my brother worked for American Electric in Birmingham, and he helped me get a part-time job while I went to school because I needed to eat and live indoors. And part-time job allowed me to do that and go to school. And I was part of American Electric for 37 years from that point forward.
So Wes, my first semester of college, I had a 1.6 GPA, and you had to have a 2.0 to stay in school. So I was immediately on academic probation, but I really put my, whatever discipline I had to work at the time, got exactly a 2.4 the second semester and stayed in school by the skin of my teeth. And so I know what you mean. It's not a matter of intellect. A lot of 18-year-olds aren't ready, and I certainly wasn't either. But it sounds like the military really sort of taught you those skills.
It did. It taught me discipline. It taught me a lot about relationships because the military is the most collaborative environment a young person can probably get into. And I learned technology. Yeah, it taught me a lot.
Yeah.
Well, as Woody Allen says, 99% of success is just showing up.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's exactly the case. And eventually, yeah, like you, eventually I figured it out. But, at that age, I just wasn't ready. And I think, for a lot of people, taking some kind of detour before college is a good idea. You chose a great path. And then you were at Mayor Electric, what'd you say, 37 years?
37 years. Yep.
Man, that's amazing. I mean, that's so unusual now, right? And you won this award not long ago, the Bernard H. Falk Award. That's from the National Electrical Manufacturers Association, right?
It is. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
And what was that like? I mean, what was that for?
I'll tell you, July 4th, 2023, I woke up, and what's the first thing we do when we wake up? We check our phones.
Yep.
Looked at my phone. I was a little blurry-eyed, and I had an email. It said, "Congratulations." And I opened it up, and it said, "I want to congratulate you on this award." And heck, I thought that was a mistake or a marketing email. And I went
Sure.
about my business. And then later on in the day, I looked back at it, and it was from NEMA, and thought, wow, that's incredible. So I didn't bother anybody on July 4th. The following week, we got on the phone, and first distributor to be awarded that award.
Wow.
It was quite an honor. And my work with IDEA, the Industry Data Exchange Association, I think was the impetus for that, because IDEA is owned by NEMA and NAED, and folks that have been around a while know IDEA is a technology company, and it started off with really two missions. One, to be an EDI van and provide cost-effective kilocharacters per cent, and to become a data platform for the harmonization and standardization of the data that would facilitate e-commerce all the way through what it does today to actually enable that. So Charles Glatt, the owner of Mayor, got me involved in that early on behalf of Mayor. So I participated in that probably for 20 years. So it was certainly certainly is an honor to achieve that award, but I didn't. Individuals don't get awards; they have names on awards. My name's on that award, but believe me, that award is really underpinned by a lot of folks in our company and in our industry. So,
Yeah.
Well, if you talk to people who competed against Mayor was considered a very formidable competitor. And you had an extraordinary run as in that C-level role from 2008 to 2023. I'll just say this for our audience. Extraordinary growth in that period, and then culminating in the sale to Rexel. So,
well, I appreciate that, and like I said, and I had a great team. Mayor's got a great team of leaders. Most of those leaders are now in meaningful roles with Rexel, and it was my opportunity to go give back in the industry. But the team at Mayor enabled me to be involved in the industry. So whatever Mayor has been able to accomplish, and now it's part of Rexel, is because of a culture and a set of values and a collective team that was able to work together to achieve some good stuff. And it just allowed me to go over here and be involved in the industry.
And that's interesting because you made a big change. I mean, I'm sure you could have retired, but instead you picked a whole new role and a whole new challenge. So, what drew you to NAED?
Yeah, so being past chair of NAED, I was the immediate past chair, and I was on the committee to do the selection of the next CEO. So here I am. I'm part of the group that's, engaging a firm to help us go look at available people, not be myopic. And John Kane, who was our chair at the time, actually called and said, "Hey, if you might be interested in this, maybe don't serve on the committee and don't be a part of the process." And I said, "John, I'm not interested."
Famous last words, right?
Yeah. So for about 3 to 4 months of that, I really was not. I was engaged in helping find the next leader. It just so happens, I was kind of on a glide path, transitioning out of my role at Rexel into whatever the next phase was. And I went to our Western Region Conference, and it was the first conference in probably 2 decades that I didn't have meetings from sunup to well after sunset. So I spent my time talking to members, distributors, suppliers, service providers, talking to NAD staff. And I came back from that meeting and I sat down with my wife and I thought, and we had a conversation around how much I enjoyed that and how much, the industry is in transformation. Is there a role for me to play in part of that? My love is technology. I love change. Maybe I can help in that. So I called John Kane the next day and I said, John, for 6 months, I was really just kidding. I really am. I really am interested in this job. So I recused myself from the committee and I went through the interview process just like every other candidate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you got the job, and that must have been one of those stunning moments, right? And suddenly you have a whole new set of challenges in front of you.
Yeah. And, I would say, so showed up at NAD and, I've been engaged with the staff of NAD for a long time, but the outside perspective, you do what board members do. You come in, you listen to the team, you pontificate on strategy and industry trends and various things, but you know everybody, but you really don't.
Yeah.
So I spent my first 3 or 4 weeks in St. Louis just really getting to know the team, being present, being visible, and very impressed with the intellect in the team and the work ethic and the culture the team had been working on at NAD. So I felt really good about, I already knew the work that NAD does is meaningful. We need to expand it because our industry is changing. So now I feel really good about, in these first 4 weeks, the work and the team and the culture and the environment. And that's a great place to be.
If you could talk to us about some of the initiatives that NAED is embarking upon. I know a little bit about the digital transformation, but I know there's a big plate of initiatives, and I think they're exciting and interesting. So
yeah, I tell you, Jonathan, and that could lead to a conversation much longer than the hour we have. But so let's try to boil this down. NAD is an industry organization serving electrical distribution. Our value add, our value proposition historically has been conferences. We help the industry collaborate and communicate and get together. That's very important. It will continue to be important. We help provide education. I mean, we have a whole educational group. We actually have instructional designers. EPIC is the gold standard common body of knowledge. We need to make sure we keep it relevant, so it will continue. We're the communication vehicle. We have TED Magazine. We have a website. We have newsletters. We help the industry communicate. And we do research. We have a research group, so we do cutting edge research in our education and research foundation. So when I got to NAD, having been on the board for quite a while, we really didn't have a good strategic plan. We had a plan, but was it evolving as fast as the industry is evolving? Was it staying relevant? We could argue about that, but it was time to update our strategic plan. So we started with every associate, every employee at NAD talking about what they see as the big rocks in our industry. How do we fit into that? What can we do? And we boiled that down to the leadership team getting together and really boiling down what are the big rocks driving our industry and how can we go help our industry. Electrification obviously is one of the biggest rocks and will continue to be. How do we help our industry as an association understand, take advantage of the opportunities in electrification? So that is a new pillar of our strategic plan, is electrification. Historically, we've left advocacy to others who had better, bigger organizations, whether it's NAW, NEMA, NECA. They do advocacy very well, but we decided with electrification and with the transformation of a big part of our industry, we needed to have a seat and a voice at that table. So we have hired somebody who will reside in DC. They'll actually cohabitate with NECA. NECA's kind enough to give us office space. So a very tight, we formed this industry initiative. We call it the collaboration, but it's NEMA, NECA, NEMRA. We're going to include highly likely we need IEC at the table. And at the heart of that is advocacy and electrification. That's different for NAED. Digitalization, we have what we call our Next Level Now campaign. And we're really focused on what are the big driving forces where NAED can facilitate. Individual members are investing a lot of money in digitalization. Manufacturers are investing a lot. Manufacturers and distributors are collaborating with their customers on digitalization. But we're looking at what can NAED do that spans across those constituent groups. And a good example is the supply chain and knowing where things are so that end user customers get things on time on the critical path. That problem's been there forever. And distributors have traditionally given visibility through brute force. Whether it's websites or phone calls or whatever, it's been a very brute force. COVID brought to the forefront that problem needs a different solution.
Yeah.
InterDigital. NAD is perfectly positioned to lead that effort. And we're going to do so. And that's just one pillar of digitalization. And then you've got, so you talk about electrification, you talk about digitalization. At the heart of workforce development, we live in a time where a lot of knowledge is exiting our industry. It's simple math. It's simple demography. I'm the last of the baby boomers. There's 10,000 people like me leaving the workforce every day, and their head leaves with them, and their head takes knowledge. And the generation behind me is only replacing me with 7,000. So there's an incongruence. You can massage the math any way you want to, but how do we help? We've got to out-attract. So we're not going to solve the 3,000 people deficit. Efficiency and knowledge and education and attracting people. We've got a great story to tell with digitalization and electrification to people who have historically not looked at this industry is an exciting place to go have a career where I can make a good living. I can enjoy what I do. I can make a meaningful difference in the world. Now, all of a sudden, we're at the heart of that. So we need to help our industry go recruit people in different ways with a different message and a different story, and then educate them in the whole diversity message. We've got to attract people who have historically been in demographics that haven't looked at our industry as being a place they would go have a career and make a living. So you look at that from a workforce development is a multifaceted issue around education and recruiting and retention and attracting people from diverse backgrounds and And I'm excited to be able to go tell that story. So those are new pillars of NAED strategy to go help enable our industry take advantage of these new opportunities in meaningful ways.
It sounds like you're going in a really positive way beyond the traditional event association mission of all associations, right?
You know, I'd like to think so. I would like, you know, our industry association, if I bring anything to NAD different, it's 37 years of being a distributor. I look at things through a distributor's lens, and how do we deliver value to our distributor members, looking at it through a distributor lens with all the institutional knowledge that NAD has internally, the tools and techniques that industry associations use. So I do think, you know, it is a different approach for NAD than historically the approach has been. Not in place of, but in addition to.
Nicely stated. Well, and then how does that play into the changing landscape of the industry? Consolidation of manufacturers, consolidation of distributors. Maybe talk to us a little bit about how these additional initiatives play into that.
Well, you know, that could be a whole dinner conversation as well. So I'll try to boil that down to at least how I look at that. So a lot of these factors that we're talking about are of themselves drivers of consolidation. You know, the investments you have to make in education, the investments you have to make in digital, the investments you have to make in whatever it is, and generational change of ownership. Those are all ingredients that are driving the consolidation of the industry. So that is inevitable, and that will continue. So from NAD, how do we make sure our membership has the tools and the resources that they need to compete effectively in a consolidating world? And I'll be honest with you, Jonathan, I don't get too excited about what consolidation is doing to our industry. I get excited about there are a lot of competitors out there that aren't core distributors, but they see an opportunity in an industry that needs to become more efficient, an industry that has probably more investment capital flowing into it because of electrification. So you see, and if you're outside and you're tangential to a distributor in another vertical, whatever it is, what motivates you is you see opportunity, you see inefficiencies, and you want to go solve for those things. So the barriers to entry to our industry, you know, you could talk a lot about those, and we sell things that are highly regulated, if used inappropriately can kill people. So that's, you know, knowledge is a barrier to entry. You got to be knowledgeable. Capital is not a barrier to entry. So the barriers to entry to this industry are, I don't think they're extraordinarily high. So new competitors coming in and competing with traditional distributors is something that I do think a lot about. You know, marketplace platforms, when you go look at the most highly capitalized companies on the planet, ultimately at their core, they're marketplace platforms, whether it's communication, whether it's, you know, a broad array of goods like Amazon, you know, marketplace specific platforms I think a lot about, and they're starting to come into this industry. So having an association that has a lens that looks out beyond to really what are the driving forces that could shape our industry 3, 5, and 10 years down the road. That's how we're starting to think.
Yeah, one thing I think about sometimes is that when people talk about, you know, mergers and acquisitions, consolidation, et cetera, what gets left off the table is that there are a lot of new distributors that get formed every year. And, you know, I mean, Mike Marks talks about this sometimes about how, you know, yeah, I mean, you're seeing consolidation. No one is trying to argue with that, but there are new startups too.
Yep.
And well, new startup is redundant, but there are startups as well. So there are these adjacent players like, you know, probably Home Depot is more threatening than Amazon Business in this regard, and Amazon Business. But then, you know, you've got people who, hey, I just left a company that got acquired, and me and my friends are going to start our own electrical distribution company because we're going to scratch all those itches we weren't able to scratch when we were owned by somebody else, you know? And so I think it's important to support and nurture those companies, and they need a place that advocates for them. You know, I'm glad to hear that you're doing advocacy because I think it's, you know, you can't forever rely on somebody else to do that for you.
Absolutely. And your comments about consolidation, you go, it's traditional industries that consolidate, then you're right. Startups spin out of that, and they typically start with a niche focus because they have a certain skill set.
Right.
And then they do what folks do when they're successful. They start looking for their adjacencies, and the cycle just continues. You're absolutely correct.
Yeah, you know, it's funny too, the remarks about, you know, electrification, which is accelerating, and I think it makes this industry very exciting. But one of the pet peeves I have is when people put down the company they work for because it's a distributor. Well, I know we're not that sexy. I know it's not that exciting. I just have never believed that. I've always thought distribution was really interesting and it had challenges for smart people. When I was in Atlanta, you know, I was in construction supplies, which is a lot of the same dynamics. We're competing for talent. We were competing with Home Depot and, you know, Delta and Coca-Cola and all these other headquarters companies. I never felt we're at a disadvantage. I felt like if you have a competitive compensation package, the work that we do is very interesting. And often you feel like you're contributing to people's well-being more so than in some other industries. And I think we should be proud and loud about how much distribution matters and how interesting these companies are and how challenging and fulfilling the work is.
That is at the heart of why workforce development, which includes recruiting new people into our industry from all kinds of backgrounds and walks of life. My lens I look through, I happen to work for a family who started a school of industrial distribution at the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Oh, cool.
So the UAB industrial distribution program has 2 tracks. UAB is a top 20 publicly funded medical research institution. So the ID track has 2 tracks. It has an industrial distribution track and it has a medical track. And once a quarter dates me, semester, I go down and I speak to, you know, the strategy class. The first thing I do is I go around the room and I ask, what track are you in? And I would tell you 90% of them are medical. And when you ask why medical, the common answers are, well, that's where the technology is, that's where the excitement is, and that's where the money is. So I spend the next hour talking about what electrical distributors do, the technologies and the digitalization of the technologies, from products in boxes to smart interconnected solutions. I talk about sustainability and how we're at the heart of sustainability. And I talk about the length of time the average electrical distributor's employee stays with their company. You don't keep people unless they're doing meaningful work, making a good living.
Right.
And all of that's at the heart. We've got, Ian, we have to tell a different story.
Right.
Because it's not the work. To your point, it is not the work. It's the storytelling.
That's right. Yeah. Actually, real quick on that point, I've been doing market research forever. A lot of times I'll present data. It might be like 800 responses to a survey. And then I'll show one clip of a customer talking about the point that just got made. That one person talking in my presentation carries much more influence than the 800 people who responded to the survey. So I paired them up. And that's because storytelling is in our nature. And we got to change the story we tell ourselves and then change the story that we tell the market, because it's very exciting and everyone should want to work, or a lot of people should want to work for our companies.
Yeah, I think technology, it's already impacted this industry as much as any other industry for the past decade.
Right.
And I think for the next 2 decades, the technology transformation in what we sell, who we sell it to, in the mediums through which we sell it, will be as impacted in this industry as any other industry on the planet.
Agreed.
Let's talk about one of the big factors that is going to change exactly those 3 things. You'd alluded to it before, which is electrification. The concept of electrification has literally been around since the 1800s, where they're trying to figure out how to get electrification. Then meant, how do we get streetlights that are not gas, they're electric powered? And there was a range of other things that were happening then. When you think about electrification now, how would you describe it or define it, and perhaps in a more broad sense?
How do you approach that in a structured way to give a meaningful answer? And I think about it like this. If you look at, on the left-hand side is generation of energy. The output's electricity, okay? And the consumption of that is ultimately loads, whether it's HVAC, whether it's powering the computer that we're doing this on. But you go all the way to the other end, it's the inputs to the generation of electricity, and that's transforming. It's been transforming. We all know solar and wind and ultimately, I think nuclear plays a role in there, as controversial as that is. The notion of public power consumption, whether large publicly traded power generation or munis and co-ops, we're moving to the off-grid, sort of private generation. So the inputs are transforming and the generation of power is transforming. So as a distributor, if I'm in that business, I'm looking at what are my solutions? Who are my partners? How do I go take advantage of that? What education does my workforce need? And what education can I go give my customer to help them, to enable them? And then you start moving through the landscape. Then you have the transmission of that. We all know our grid lacks both capacity and quality. So as a distributor, I'm thinking about who are my customers that help build grid infrastructure. And it's the same process. Who are my partners? Who are my customers? What education can I give them? What are my systems and solutions? And I go sell those systems. Then, okay, the grid gets to a consumer. And there, you start looking at, you've got industrials, you got commercial, institutional, you got shoot, my mind goes blank, but you got transportation, you got consumers, and they fall into so if I'm in commercial institutional focus, whether it's hospitals or commercial buildings, I'm looking at what are their loads and what are their needs and what solutions do I have. And again, it's making sure my sales force knows the solutions of our partners, and we're selling those systems and solutions, and we're helping educate our customers who will create the demand. Then you get down to the loads, okay? And all of a sudden at the loads, smart drives, variable speed drives for HVAC systems, which is one of the largest consumers of electricity, so distributors play in one or more. They may have their specialty, they may be generalists, but they really need to think about how do they take advantage of this whole electrification from production to consumption.
Hmm.
That's how I look at it through my lens.
Yeah.
And so I love that definition of production through transmission to consumption. Let's take some of the loads. So one idea that's out there is the role of microgrids, which is a little bit of a back to the future thing when companies were producing their own energy. Could you talk to us about microgrids and what you see there?
Well, what I see there is an opportunity for, companies that have scale, that have sustainability targets, that have all of these drivers of why would someone want to do a microgrid? Well, to meet some of their sustainability goals, they might want to create a microgrid that has clean inputs to their necessary output, which is electricity to run their facility. So that's a driver. They might want to lower their energy costs and produce it themselves cheaper than they can buy it. So the motivations for microgrids are determined by individual companies. But once you make that decision, determining what is the best input for me, solar, wind, whatever it might be. So the impetus, the desire to do that is ultimately sustainability targets, being responsible to your shareholders, your owners, being able to fund and generate your own electricity at a lower cost and drive profitability and investment capital, and maybe to even sell energy back onto the grid that you have excess. So that to me is the driver of what is causing people to go off grid. And if you're worried about demand is far outstripping capacity, it's also a defensive strategy to say, okay, I can do sustainability, I can produce power at a lower total net cost, I can sell excess back onto the grid, and oh, by the way, I create a hedge against what might be variability in the input to my facility electricity. So those are the motivators that I think ultimately drive someone to go off grid.
It seems like those are not quite as far along as some of the other newer loads. Let's talk about EV for a moment. So right now the plan is to go from about 100,000 public charging stations to 1.2 million over a pick your time frame, and this relates a little bit to whatever's happening with the government, 6, 8, 10 years. So whichever time frame you choose, it's a significant period. The slower charging ports, what are known as level 1, the ones that we have in our home, maybe in a multifamily property or a workplace, we're supposed to have 27 million of those over that same time frame. Just curious where your keen mind goes with thinking about that and what it means for electrical and maybe even for other areas of distribution.
Well, I think about it in 2 or 3 different planes. Yeah, one is, just the sheer infrastructure that has to be built out there. And if you talk to electrical contractors, their number one constraint is labor. So you have competition for labor. Labor is going to be deployed at first to the largest scale, most profitable projects. So you start getting down to individual charging stations and you bifurcate that pretty substantially. So our capacity to install those is challenged. That's a reason for workforce development and becoming more efficient and increasing the scale capability of installing that infrastructure. You back up from that, and those chargers they have to have an input electricity. And we've got to scale that input because there's demand for that electricity. And the electricity is going to flow to the highest net profitable consumer. And, so you got all of these competing things just to drive the charging infrastructure. But I'll be a little bit provocative here and say, those level 1 chargers at scale, for those people that can charge their car overnight in their homes, which is a large proportion, that's perfectly acceptable. You start looking at mass transportation, by mass trucking, people that drive 4 or 5 hours a day for their job, spending 30 minutes charging your car in an infrastructure where a lot of times the charging station doesn't even work. That is a barrier to the adoption of EVs to start with.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at charging and battery technology, I'm not sure that we're using the batteries today that we'll be using in 5 to 10 years from now. And that might be a little bit provocative because we're building battery plants at scale, and they can certainly transform their output batteries to other technologies. Let's don't get sidetracked there. But, a lithium-ion battery where the manufacturer's manual tells you don't charge it above 80%, that's probably a red flag right to start with. And then you got to buy a separate warranty for the battery because the battery is the most expensive, least reliable piece of the car. There are pragmatic things that consumers are looking out there that people aren't really talking about. Why aren't we seeing the adoption? If we're not seeing cars go off lots at the speed and scale we thought, we need to understand that. And I think I just talked about that. And if you're not seeing the cars fly off the lots, by the way, if you look at the fastest depreciating cars, your car's worth half of what it was. Typical depreciation on a car is about 25% in the first year. We're talking 50 to 60% in the first year. So you look at the ownership costs, is the infrastructure for EVs, is that going to grow any faster than the sales of the consumer that pulls up to that charger?
Right.
The answer to that is no. So I think we've got to look at what's the barrier to the adoption of the cars. And it's sort of a circular reference, right? You don't want a car you don't have a place to charge, but you don't want to charge it for a car you don't want.
Yeah, I was going to exactly that point. It's the network effect or Metcalfe's law. You got to get both sides lined up to make it work.
Yep. Yeah.
So I'm hearing what you're saying is when I mentioned 6, 8, 10 years, you think it could be even longer based on getting through whatever the logjam is of.
I don't know. I mean, I know you asked that question. Yeah.
I don't know that I would say 6 to 10 years. I think it will move faster than that. I would think it will move faster because government is doing what governments do, and that's allocate capital where a private investor would not see the return on that capital to somewhere down the road. That's where governments do what governments do, and they seed the playing field, and that's happening at scale. So people are going to go rationally take advantage of the opportunity, and the private industry deploys capital pretty efficiently. I think we're going to see it move a lot faster than that, Jonathan. I think we're going to see the innovation in the technology move at a more rapid pace as an enabler to start the adoption at scale. That's my point. My point is the technology, but the technology transformation will happen as fast as probably any time in history, in my opinion.
Well, that's like Toyota's got this new solid state battery. It's totally different than a lithium ion battery. They're talking about 500, 600, 700 miles on a 10-minute charge.
Exactly.
And, if I figure that might be what you were referring to. I mean, and Toyota's, talk about your credible manufacturers, right? I mean, if they claim that, they're probably going to do it. And if they license it to other manufacturers, to me, that's the game changer because that enables you to, I mean, I don't know, maybe you can fly planes on electricity. If not, it's everything but, right? With that kind of battery performance. And, I think the stuff like that is going to just be the game changer, and that might be the thing that breaks it. The other thing is, I can't remember where I saw this the other day, but there's like $1 trillion worth of private equity funds on the side, just dry powder waiting to be invested somewhere.
Yeah.
So, man, you get this new level of performance. You know, if you could do to batteries what LEDs did to incandescent light bulbs, right?
That's the inflection point.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think when that breaks, I think the speed at which the transformation happens is going to be almost blinding.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do we have to be doing now? Because if we agree that's going to happen, the grid infrastructure, that just has to be done now.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, to your point, that's where government invests in it as a public good,
Yep.
or at least, you know, provides incentive for investment.
Yep.
Here's an interesting thing I noted. I looked at, take the top 5 largest distributors in this country. We know who they are. If you go to search for charging stations on any of those top 5 sites, you can barely find a SKU.
And that's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you make of that? And what do you see the distributors need to do that they're not doing to take advantage?
Well, I happen to know because I obviously worked for a large regional, super regional, whatever you want to call them. Then I became part of a multinational public company that absolutely has sustainability targets, absolutely understands the opportunity in electrification, and absolutely created energy groups within their organizations to go build out partnerships, build out their internal infrastructure, and be a resource to the broader, broad-based branch. So building a center of excellence and then spreading that knowledge, that's all occurring, and it's occurring rapidly at scale. So to me, what I'm interpret that as is an incongruence between what is being done and the communication of what's being done. Okay, so you know, I'm not a search engine and a web deployment and an e-commerce expert, but I know the things that you search for are a function of you rig the outcome in terms of where you place that and how your engines respond to queries. Maybe that infrastructure's got to be built out more and it's got to be seeded more to generate those results, Jonathan. That's an interesting, I haven't been out focused on that, but when I hear you say that, I see incongruence between what's being done and showing what's being done.
Makes all the sense in the world. Wes, this has been absolutely amazing. We knew this was going to be a great discussion, and we had several parking lot items that could lead to longer discussions. We hope to get down to Birmingham soon to visit with you. So to be continued.
I love it. And like we said at the start, this is one of those, we could spend hours talking about this and really just scratch the surface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Totally agree. Great. So, hey, Wes, I want to add my thanks and ask the audience to hold on for just a second because we got some exciting things coming up. We are doing our first ever profit and productivity summit, optimization strategies for distributors, everything end to end for driving profit, whether that's improving margins, improving rebates, improving cost to serve, you name it. We've got some fantastic speakers lined up. Go to profitandproductivity.com to get more information on that event. And then on August 14th, we've got a tech discussion featuring Chris Van Ittersum, the CEO of Supply Mover. We'll probably add somebody else to that conversation. We're going to be talking about how AI can drive sales, productivity, and profits. And on August 21st, we're doing our latest best practice study on the state of distributor sales. I'm doing that with our Chief Customer Officer, Brian Hopkins. That's sponsored by OMS Data, Extreme, and Intershop. So we hope you'll join us for that. But thank you for joining us today for this. Wes, what a pleasure. Thank you for honoring us with your time.
Oh, thank you for asking me. It's my honor.
You bet. All right. We'll see you next time on the Wholesale Change Show. Best wishes until then.